Hello, everyone. Aditi,
A
are you
very
beginning? Sorry, Meher. Meher,
yes,
are
yes,
you
ma'am.
beginning the conversation? Yeah,
Yes,
please.
yes. I'm glad to
Yeah.
be beginning in a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today. I am Meher Gandhi, and on behalf of Kalika Literary Festival, I am super enthusiastic about beginning this session and introducing our esteemed panel of speakers today. And I would like to talk about Priyanka Dubey right now, and a new Delhi-based journalist. Priyanka Dubey's works on gender and human rights, among other themes, have been noted and have been published on platforms such as Hindustan Times, The Scroll, among others. She is the well-deserved recipient of the 2015 Knight International Journalism Award, Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Indian Journalism, and the Kurt Schrock Award in Indian Journalism. Her book, No Nation for Women Reportage on Rape from India, the world's largest democracy, was published in 2018. And we are absolutely delighted to have you with us today, Priyanka ma'am. Thank you for joining us. A political entrepreneur, an author, a TV panelist, and the founder of CHUM, Shubhrastha is the author of The Last Battle of Saraigat, the story of the BJP's rise in the Northeast, along with Rajat Sethi. Shubhrastha has also gained experience as the assistant editor of the Indian Foundation Journal. We are delighted to have Shubhrastha with us today. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. I would also like to welcome Rituparna Chatterjee, who is a journalist, a writer, and she has been the US correspondent for the Economic Times. She is the author of the book on Nawazuddin Siddiqui called An Ordinary Life, a Memoir, co authored with Nawazuddin Siddiqui, and The Water Phoenix, a memoir of childhood abuse, healing, and forgiveness. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. We warmly welcome all the three authors in this esteemed panel, and today author Priyanka Dubey will be in conversation with Rituparna Chatterjee and Shubhrastha on the book No Women. I now invite author Priyanka Dubey to take over the stage. Thank you, ma'am.
Priyanka?
Hello. Yeah. Hi, Shubhrastha. Hi, Ritu. Uh,
Hi.
am I audible to both of you? आपको आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
बिल्कुल clearly.
Good.
Priyanka, is your network fine? Can you hear us?
मुझको एक सेकंड क्योंकि मेरे को शायद ना आवाज एक मिनट ना मैं इसको
Priyanka, you may try rejoining once. Just exit and then rejoin. अच्छा जब तक प्रियंका till the time Priyanka gets back, let me just try and introduce both these authors from the point of view of this session and why we planned this session. So you would remember that a couple of weeks back, Rituparna and I were in conversation about Rituparna's book. It's an amazing book. It's a very personal book. It's also a book which uses fiction as a trope to delve into a very important issue, which is of child abuse and generally of violence against women and girls. Um, After having that conversation, I think both of us kept on discussing this and many other issues later on over our long WhatsApp conversations, etc. And we realize that perhaps there is a gap which needs to be filled. The refuge which writers take in words, especially when they delve into fiction, is something that needs to be accosted by day-to-day realities also. And I think this is where Priyanka's book becomes very similar. Priyanka has traveled the hinterlands of India in order to discuss some of the most gruesome of stories that deal with gang rapes, that deal with horrendous crimes like rape in its various shades and format. Priyanka's book, No Nation for Women, is so pithy and so rooted in reality that it is only in Rituparna's fictional refuge that one might find a way to vent one's anger and vent all kinds of emotions. So I think it's a huge honor for me to bring these two amazing writers who sort of bridge the gap between what a woman feels and what a woman receives from the outside world. So Rituparna, till Priyanka joins us, could you please walk us through this journey? Because you have also been a journalist, and I'm sure when you were negotiating with your own question with respect to child abuse, you were also, I'm sure you would have tried to chronicle it or journal it in more than one ways. So, how does the journalist in you look at the story that you have tried to build up in your memoir of sorts?
Well, thank you so much, Shubhrastha, for having this panel, for connecting both. You brought up such an important question, and as journalists, we are so focused on facts that it becomes, I think there's a lot of unlearning to be able to write fiction, and I found memoir to be a perfect bridge. I think my previous book helped me unlearn a lot, that you're still presenting facts, but in a memoir is that bridge, right? It's all real stuff, but it's in a very palatable fictional way, so it's gentle and therefore more powerful in its own way. And facts are, of course, they hit you hard. So I wanted that because I wanted it to have a timeless element. This is before I was even aware of books like No Nation for Women existed. And I think only with words and with deep contemplation can you go into the inner void that is there. Because one thing that, and it's one of my questions for Priyanka as well, is that the very systems that are built to protect women, citizens, vulnerable groups, she talks about the Pardhi tribals, are often responsible for these crimes. And it's the same with child abuse. How will you have access to a child? So this brings up a whole bunch of psychological processes which span an entire lifetime. What happened, how did it happen, it affects your day-to-day ability of I could not have mustard oil for the longest time because I had an association with being molested as a child with mustard oil. So small things, every single thing is affected, but it doesn't have to be that drastic. It could also be what Priyanka, and I will leave it to her in the last part, talks about shaming of how the community outcasts, as what was this woman's fault except that she was a woman, she did nothing. So all these intricacies, for me, it was very important that assume that you've gotten your justice and everything, you still have to deal with the healing, with the trauma of it all. And I think that's where how my book is different, and what all the tropes you mentioned helped me address.
Rituparna, your book is a very brave piece of work, not just in terms of the fact that you faced it and you wrote about it, but it's also brave because it's a very new form, literary form that you were trying to explore. Now, Priyanka, coming to you, you have been reading a lot and posting a lot these days about various writers that you've been going seeking refuge in order to learn and unlearn the entire process of however we are brought up. It's also important to note that you are in the process of writing a fiction yourself. And you have, of course, written No Nation for Women, which is a completely non-fictional account of horrendous cases of rape all across the country, especially in North and Central India. How do you deal with this question? Would you, today, in hindsight, would you rather write No Nation for Women as how Rituparna has planned it, or do you see that the book in itself is complete in its journey?
I missed your last line. Do you see?
Do you see No Nation for Women as a complete book in its own right, or rather, let me frame it differently. Do you think fiction would have done more justice to No Nation for Women, a fictionalized account of it, or any other literary extent that you have made it? Yeah.
That's a very good question, Shubhrastha. Very good question, and this is the first time somebody has posed this question to me. I think the magnitude of violence against women in India is so large, and it impacts our lives in such a omnipresent manner. It encapsulates us in so many ways at emotional level, in our thought processes, in our everyday conversations. Uh, that is why I feel that no one vidha, no one format is enough to completely encapsulate or completely or impactfully kind of translate what we feel on paper. I'm still in the hit and trial kind of method. I have done non-fiction and I want to do fiction, but I'm very sure, there's a very special thing that I want to talk about here. When the kind of fiction that I read Nirmal Verma and writers who have a different taste. But when I think of, because now I'm also working on some fiction and in Hindi, तो when I think of the fiction that I want to do in Hindi, तो मुझे जो चीजें ख्याल में आती हैं, जो मुझे किताबें पसंद आती हैं, वो मतलब बिलवड जैसी किताब है, या मतलब मैं I cannot even, I'm very sure that in my fiction also this is going to come in one way or other. So I'm going to address, I cannot like keep myself away from what is happening to us as people, as women in India. Recently abhi wo jo Kerala wala the judgment which has been, जिसकी काफी चर्चा हो रही है, जिसमें there's this nun case, उसमें भी accused को मतलब जिस तरह से acquit किया गया, उस पे बहुत ज्यादा बातचीत चल रही है. ऐसे बहुत सारे cases होते रहते हैं. So my point is कि what I feel is no one format, fiction or non-fiction, is as powerful enough. We can try, it can work for some people, it cannot, and it will not be the same for other people. So some writer might be so powerful, might be so capable to to encapsulate and to convey what he or she is trying to feel in one format, and I'm happy for them, but it's not the case for me. I was feeling very incomplete when I did fiction. Like, I tried my best. This is 7-8 years of my work, and I invested my everything, my soul, my everything in this book. But still, I felt कि बहुत सारा छूट गया है. बहुत कुछ था जो नहीं हो पाया. बहुत improvise कर सकती थी. बहुत अच्छे से लिख सकती थी. Now, when I'm doing fiction, you constantly miss the non-fiction form also. But certainly, fiction allows. One thing I'll have to add, that certainly fiction allows us for a larger stage, and we can do a lot of things. One thing is because as one of my favorite writers, Susan Sontag has said कि fiction जो है वो ऐसे के element contain करता है अपने अंदर. तो बहुत सारे उपन्यासों के वो नाम लेती थी, जिसमें कि अपना टॉमस मान का माउंटेन मैजिक है. बहुत सारे ऐसे उपन्यासों के नाम लेती थी जिसमें वो कहती थी कि वो ऐसे का फॉर्म उसके अंदर आ जाता है. So if you are trying fiction, you can incorporate the form of non-fiction in it, because fiction is considered the highest form. I think non-fiction का relevance अलग है, non-fiction का importance अलग है. Or I think I'm not very sure how fiction will play out for me, but one thing I'm very sure about is that we need a lot of books around this subject in all formats in India, because the more the documentation, the better it is. It will help us to understand and to see this issue from different vantage points, and it will be more polyphonic. And a polyphonic understanding is always better. Polyphonic, a multi-voiced understanding, which also comes with a certain sense of conflict in it, is always better for improving ourselves as humans in this in the larger scheme of things.
I cannot but agree with what both of you have said, especially because as a writer myself, I felt the most happy when I was writing those dramatized versions in my book as well, because that it's very true that setting yourself in a fiction mode gives you a much larger canvas to say many more things without being in the face, too much in the face, and also concealing some of your really vulnerable positions and attributes. It gives you a lot more freedom than what non-fiction does, because non-fiction always demands that you testify everything with with a quotation. You testify everything with, I quoted this from this place,
Totally.
this panna number edited by this person in that year. फिर 5 साल के बाद ये review हुआ, वो करने की जरूरत नहीं होती है आपको. So you're more free in that sense.
I
My
think I'd just
next
like
question.
to add to that. Sorry, I didn't mean it just came. I wanted to just add to
Go
that.
ahead,
I
go
think
ahead.
journalists and writers, this is constant. But with non-fiction, the focus is more on facts. But with fiction, you can delve very deeply into truths. You can just take one tiny fact and delve so deeply into truths. And I think that has a bigger effect, long-lasting in its own way. But both, they kind of need each other to exist. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would, in fact, add something here. In fact, I would like to give out a recommendation to the viewers right now, or those who would want to view it later on. When I read Priyanka's book, and when I read both of your books, I mean, I cried, I howled, and I called both of you. I hope you guys remember in Priyanka's, the launch of the book, I was crying. I met her with, with tears in my eyes and all of that. So this could happen because Priyanka, despite the fact that she was chronicling those stories, there was a part of her which was there everywhere. And on the other hand, when I read somebody like a Meenakshi Jain, who is a historian and whose only job, and I think she is one of the only historians in India today, who has only dealt with facts. She has very strong opinions of her own with respect to how her findings, lead to a certain kind of narrative. But not even once in her books, the books that has been published, not even once has she tried to push forward a historical opinion. And I think that's what happens when you take slight bit of a freedom in your writing. Okay, let's move on from here. And I would want to know from both of you, amazing writers, when you look at a question like rape, or when you look at a question like violation of women's bodies and minds by men and patriarchy, which are the two, three books that come to your mind that have inspired you as writers while you were doing these seminal works?
I think she mentioned Beloved, or all of, I think, everything Toni Morrison's, and there's a whole bunch of um, African American women writing, because you see, when they write in this context, Alice Walker, Color Purple, all of it, when they write in this context, they are the most vulnerable in the American, you know, system, whatever you want to call it. I really hate comparisons and labels, but it's the same. The most vulnerable in India are subjected to this, at least, and I'm focusing more on Priyanka's book. The truth is that, it's everywhere, irrespective of socio-economic. But of course, she talks of, I think the Pardhi tribal just is still haunting me. I finished reading Priyanka's book, like, I think 10 days ago. I cried and I was so disturbed for a few days. But I think those writers, because they are so huge, you really realize that everything is so universal. Even if the people may be different, we are human. Our stories are what bind us. So those writers for me, African American women writers.
Priyanka?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I started working on No Nation for Women, Shubhrastha, I think I was 23-year-old, and then the basic reason why I had to work on the nonfiction book was that I was a magazine reporter, and in magazines you tend to do for magazine cover stories, you tend to do some research, and when I used to go around India and report stories on gender, I always used to feel dearth of on ground reported first hand kind of books on this issue. I found Swati Bhattacharjee, it was published by Seagull Publications, but it was a collection of essays and opinion pieces, edited book. So that was the reason I felt that this is something which should be written. But by the time this book came out, there were a couple of other books, good books out there. But I would like me, Beloved has influenced a book called by big influence. Also, our own myths, like we all the and Mahabharata, in different. And my biggest was what was happening in my surroundings, and when I went around.
Priyanka, your voice is really patchy, and I think the only two books that I could catch names of were Mahabharata and Beloved. So, can we do this? Can we just have you on audio if it is creating a lot of issue? Okay, Rituparna, interestingly, and please allow me this freedom now that we've discussed it, and allow me this freedom to talk about your next book, a little bit about your next book. I'm not doing that completely. I know that you don't want to do this, but because Priyanka mentioned Mahabharata, and this is all to blame on Priyanka, not on me. Let me just put it out. It is very interesting how in our texts, especially texts like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, Silapatikara, if we go down towards South India, all of these epics have dealt with the woman question, especially the exploitation of the women.
Yes.
Exploitation of the women question in general, not just womanhood, femininity, and the feminine. But it has also given a lot of hope in terms of the other various forms of femininity that we have, various forms of divinity that we have. Let me bring this to the current debates on feminism. As writers who incidentally happen to be women, how do you look at this issue? How do you negotiate with issues of women in our mythological or quasi-historical, whatever you would like to? I don't want to make it controversial texts. How do you look at that? Because I remember you talking about your association with lots of gods, goddesses on a completely different plane. Please talk about that a little.
Um, well, I forgot to mention one book that was Liberation of Sita by Volga. I think that was an excellent book. It's so small, it's so powerful. It's also one of my favorite books. It just goes on to how every woman was wrong, not just Sita, Ahalya, Surpanakha, like what were their faults really. So I personally don't. I mean, I have always considered Sita to be a feminist. I have not read as much as you, Shubhrastha, about our epics, but I do read the Gita on and off a little bit, just like an affirmation or and our mythologies. I don't think anything has changed. There's a Draupadi in each and every one of us, and it's not the physical act of rape alone. It's about boundaries, right? How dare you exist? How dare a child exist? If her five husbands could not save her, then who can? That's why feminism had to happen. The woman had to stand up for herself. This whole concept of we did another author, Sonora Jha on KLF on raising a feminist son, how to raise a feminist son, and we talked about this that the whole concept of feminism has come up, but it's so misconstrued. It doesn't mean male bashing or anything of the sort. It just is being allies. It's a sisterhood. Patriarchy means hum yahan hai, aap yahan. It's just in the mindset. And what is so interesting, even with all of our myths and legends, as well as in Priyanka's reportage in No Nation for Women, is that none of this has anything to do with sexuality. It's just, hey, I'm powerful. I'm going to prove to you. There was, I think, one in Bengal about a girl who was beautiful and she was independent and she could have gotten jobs. So it made others feel insecure. Like she's just doing her own thing. A child is just doing their own thing. There's another story, I think, of an 8-year-old who robbed 10 rupees. And I'm coming back to Priyanka's book. I don't know where it was, but he was molested by the constable. What was a child doing? 10 rupees. I mean, come on. I don't know how if our myths have ever ended. It's the same thing that the most vulnerable are not only abandoned but also attacked by the forces that were there to protect them in the first place. And I keep going back to children. So why not feminism? I mean, my idea of a dream society, and to me that is a very feminist picture. That's because of my interest, is women weaving baskets together by the riverside or knitting sweaters or whatever it is. And I've actually been part of old women's groups here where we will make a quilt together, a giant quilt, and just that bonding. and society may judge this as being, oh, you are, because it's not very aggressive or career focused or out there. These are all definitions that have come up. We are completely content in our sisterhood and we have a safe space. Earlier in tribal societies, women used to free bleed together during the menstruation cycle. So all of the, we have lost, to me, that is feminism. And this is why to me Sita is the ultimate feminist. She stands up. She has never been, I don't know, I think Chitra Divakaruni Banerjee has dealt with these in her work as well, used fiction to focus on Draupadi in Palace of, I think Palace of Illusions, and Forest of Enchantments was Sita, and Palace of Illusions was Draupadi, and how Krishna was her friend. And the what goes on inside, and kind of similar to my book also, what goes on inside from the beginning till the end, and the abuse is just happens to be. So I think our mythologies are
Yeah.
these. Draupadi is a feminist. Sita is a great feminist. I mean, in the end, she goes out there. She stays by herself. I really recommend you guys read Liberation of Sita by Volga, because it only deals with all the women wronged in the Ramayana. It's so tiny. It doesn't even go into the story. It just
Yeah, yeah.
assumes it's so powerful. So we have actually, we talk about patriarchy, the country with the maximum number of devis and goddesses. We have also had a lot of feminism. Like, I mean, I'm Bengali. We are on paper a matriarchal, culture. Our women tend to be a little more, whatever is the perception, just more in their power. So I think feminism has been a deep part of Indian culture since the beginning of time, and we need to honor that, really.
Priyanka?
Yes, yes. I would like to. I agree with Rituparna. I think I'm really sorry for the technical glitch. I think my internet has been a little shaky, but I'm clear now. So I want to add. I agree that I feel Draupadi was a was very strong. Was a very strong personality. And about Sita, I feel that she was a feminist, a woman. But I grew up in a house where my mother would often argue with my father, and she would ask him कि अगर राम इतने मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम थे तो सीता को उन्होंने क्यों ऐसा जाने दिया. और वो उनका सेंटिमेंट जो था मेरी मदर का, वो बिल्कुल उस तरीके से, उस पीड़ा से निकल के आता था, जो कि हम शायद सभी लोग जिस पीड़ा को शेयर भी करते हैं, जिसको समझते हैं. There was a sense in her that Sita was wronged and she shouldn't have been sent for the vanvas, and especially when she was pregnant and all of that. So wo, but the way she raised her children is is obviously, which is seen with a lot of reverence in a lot of Indian homes. और मुझे तो ये भी था कि ये द्रौपदी के ऊपर तो एक मैंने छोटी सी कविता भी उस पे लिखी थी कि जब द्रौपदी इनका ये होता है, जब ये जाने लगते हैं, मतलब टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ देयर लाइव्स, ये जो स्वर्गरोहिणी पहाड़ से ये जो इनकी आखिरी यात्रा होती है, उसमें सबसे पहले ये है कि द्रौपदी जाती हैं, द्रौपदी की मृत्यु दिखाई गई है, उनका अंत दिखाया गया है, इसलिए कि फिर उसमें जब रचनाले पूछा जाता है तो युधिष्ठिर कहते हैं कि वो अर्जुन को ज्यादा प्यार करती थी. तो मुझे ये बात इतनी इतनी मतलब अट्रैक्ट करती है कि मैंने उस पर लिखा भी है कि अगर अर्जुन से अतिरिक्त प्रेम द्रौपदी का पाप था, तो वो तो मैंने भी कई बार किया है, मतलब अपने सभी प्रेमियों को छोड़ एक तुमसे सबसे ज्यादा प्यार करने का पाप. तो ये तो मुझे इतनी मेटाफोरिकल चीज लगती है. चॉइस का असर्शन बहुत लेयर्ड है, इसको ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट में नहीं देखना चाहिए. बहुत लेयर्ड है, पूरा कॉन्सेप्ट बहुत लेयर्ड है, और हम लोग कहीं ना कहीं हम सबकी साइकी उससे बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस होती है. ऑब्वियसली ये हमारे और मैं इसमें जोड़ना चाहूंगी, अर्शिया सत्तार की एक बहुत अच्छी किताब आई है, ऋतुपर्णा ने जिनकी किताब का नाम लिया उसके साथ में, रामायण के ऊपर. वो भी मतलब सबको, अर्शिया सत्तार का जो काम है रामायण पर बहुत अच्छा काम है, और उनकी अभी एक हाल ही में किताब वही जो मेरे पास है भी अभी, बहुत वो भी पढ़ना चाहिए. मुझे लगता है अब मेरी आवाज भी, आई एम ऑडिबल, आई कैन हियर बोथ ऑफ यू, तो मैं आई विल बी एबल टू रिस्पॉन्ड टू क्वेश्चंस मोर प्रॉपर्ली.
बात जब सीता की होती है ना प्रियंका, या ऋतुपर्णा, आई कम फ्रॉम बिहार, सो इट्स अ वेरी इमोशनल इशू फॉर मी, बट आई विल कीप माय ओपिनियंस टू माय सेल्फ. आई थिंक आई एग्री विद व्हाट बोथ ऑफ यू हैव सेड. मैं ये सवाल इसलिए पूछ रही हूँ क्योंकि अभी नाउ लेट मी, we have moved like 30 minutes of our conversation, we've been live for 30 minutes. I want to mold this conversation more in the here and the now, more in the contemporary, of whatever is happening around us. See, we will not deny that there is a cultural resurgence of sorts in this country where people are trying to interpret and reinterpret religious texts, texts which have religious or mythological consequences, and basically inviting conversations along those lines. And in this entire phenomena that is going on, where do you see the role of women, especially as writers, also as writers who have been writing about exploitation of women in more than one ways, treating their bodies as sites of struggle, which it has been for centuries now, and also treating the woman's psyche as some sort of a site of struggle which men have not been able to control. Somehow it's very easy for us to talk about Draupadi and Sita, but it's very difficult to talk about Durga or Kali, because Sita and Draupadi are domesticated personalities in more than one ways. And they have embraced their domesticity in all its glory and have redefined femininity and womanhood in a completely different way. But what about Durga and Kali? Can we fictionalize can we dare to fictionalize their journeys today?
Well, in Bengali culture, again, there's Bhadra Kali and there's Kali. The split has been made by society. It's so funny you mentioned that. When I was just chatting with my father the other day, and when I was very little and growing up in rural Maharashtra, because he was posted, the people would ask me, "Are you Kali? Are you Gauri?" And like it became like a pun because of my skin color, and we don't need to get into what a big issue that is already in India, because I was tanned and then suddenly I was less tanned. So they meant Kali Gori, and then it became Kali Gauri. And I don't know, it's just so poignant and it's so wrong and so offensive at all levels. And I was just thinking of that, so I thought I'd share it. The split has been made by society, and the fact that Kali, what made her that, what made her into this, and in the end, it's Durga and Kali who rid the land of Rakshas, right? They are the ultimate feminists who created that. It's all patriarchal society that created both Gauri and Kali, Bhadra Kali and Kali, the split. That this is the domesticated woman whom we will approve of. Moment she expresses herself in all of her glory, all of her fullness, she's unacceptable. Her truth, like that a woman from Bengal in Priyanka's book who got raped and I believe killed at the end. I'm not sure, because she was, just so independent and beautiful, and just by being heard threatened everybody. So society can take it as, hey, this person is doing so great, and let me, instead of being envious and acting out of insecurity, let me up my game, let me get better at that, whatever insecurities are there, instead of shutting down the woman. So I don't know, I hope we get there. The answer is just authenticity, without live and let live, irrespective of gender. Just be your authentic self.
Priyanka, I basically wanted to ask that in this age, in this here and now, the contemporary India that we have today, we have some sort of a cultural resurgence going on. And as a woman who is writing, and as a woman who is facing whatever you are facing and however you are seeing the world at large, do you think we can discuss Durga and Kali just as we discuss Sita and Draupadi? Because Sita and Draupadi come from the domesticated clan of womanhood who have embraced family and different tropes of family. Okay, let's Priyanka, if you are Priyanka, if you're around and if you got the question, please. Did you get the question, Priyanka? Okay, the network is really bad. Anyway, so Rituparna, I just wanted to add to this and wanted to carry forward this conversation. I agree with you in whatever you said. I just want to add that Durga and Kali, despite the obviously you discuss color and you ascribe different kinds of meaning to how society interprets it. But the problem, but the beauty of it all is that in Durga Saptashati, whether it is Durga or it is Kali, there is no differentiation with respect to color. In fact, Kali would not be as beautiful if she were not dark skinned. Her
Yes.
passions couldn't have, come forth.
I
Her
love her.
calling,
She's my favorite. She's my favorite of all the positives. Yeah.
yeah, the fact that she's so fearless that
Yeah.
महाकाल की जो अर्धांगिनी हूँ, महाकाल जिनसे शक्ति पाते हूँ, जो श्मशान काली के रूप में भी एक अलग उनका रूप है, भद्रकाली के रूप में एक अलग उनका रूप है, उनसे ज्यादा तो कोई क्या ही होगा। प्रियंका, मैं सवाल ये पूछ रही थी कि हम जिस तरह से, I think we'll have to really schedule another session
Because of the network, yeah.
that I really want to do this conversation with Priyanka as well, because she has a very interesting take on this.
Yes.
So, Rituparna, if you were Priyanka, are you there?
Yes. I can hear you.
Please go ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
या कैन यू एक बार थोड़ा सा मुझे रिकैप, मेरा बीच में डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया था, थोड़ा सा मुझे क्वेश्चन एक बार बता देंगे व्हाट हम एक बार।
मैं ये कह रही हूँ कि अभी जो कल्चरल रिसर्चेस चल रहा है, धर्म की बात अलग अलग रूप में आ रही है, तो ऐसे सिचुएशन में हम दुर्गा और काली को क्या हम उसी तरह डिस्कस कर सकते हैं जैसे हम सीता और द्रौपदी को डिस्कस करते हैं? बिकॉज सीता और द्रौपदी कहीं ना कहीं पारिवारिक महिलाएं हैं, जिनकी शादी हुई, जिनके बच्चे हुए, जिनका एक पितृसत्ता से एक अलग तरीके का रिश्ता रहा। दुर्गा और काली इन सभी चीजों से मुक्त हैं। तो हम जिस रूप में चर्चा आज कर रहे हैं, क्या हम कैन वी डेयर टू डू द सेम?
मुझे लगता है चाहे कोई भी माहौल हो, एक एकेडमिक और एक फैक्ट बेस्ड या फिर एक रिसर्च ओरिएंटेड, किसी भी डायरेक्शन पर एक रिसर्च डिस्कशन सोसाइटी में हर इसमें जो उसको हम एकदम such of with the sincerity which comes to intensity को डील किया जाए तो कर सकते हैं, और अगर नहीं कर सकते तो हमें मतलब सोचना चाहिए कि हम कर सकते, मतलब कोई भी चीज है। आई डू नॉट वर्किंग फॉर सोसाइटी में कुछ चीजें एकदम टैबूड हो या कुछ पे आप बात ही नहीं कर सकते। मुझे लगता है एक इंटेंशन अगर आप इस पे क्लैरिटी के साथ। हेलो,
हाँ प्रियंका, बहुत पैची तरीके से आवाज आई, लेकिन मोटा मुझे लगता है समझ में आया कि whatever you were trying to say. Rituparna and Priyanka, I think because the network is patchy and I don't want this conversation to go on like this, we are missing out on very important bits from Priyanka. And I know, as a friend, I know this, that she has a lot more to say than this. The network is just not doing justice to this. So maybe we'll reschedule the session, or we will frame this session in a completely different way sometime. But Rituparna, thank you for the audacious and ambitious project that you have taken up next. I can't wait to read your book. I don't know when is it out. I don't even know if the manuscript is ready. Though we'll discuss this. We'll discuss
I'm
this.
struggling with my own Gauri and Kali within me. As we do with all books, it's like climbing Mount Everest.
Of course, you are a free yet domesticated woman in more than one ways. So no, I'm just using the term domesticated as a
and we have a common saying: Shubhrastha is a true feminist.
Wow, I didn't know that. I don't even know if I really embrace that term in all its glory. I'm a woman, and I think I would just rest it at that.
Right. I think these are labels created by society again and again.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know why this is the first time it is happening. I do many lives from my home, and this problem has never come. I don't know why. Even on the day when it snowed in Shimla, I did a very good live. I don't know why today the network is acting. I apologize. I'm really sorry, both of you. If
No,
we can,
Priyanka,
but now, yeah. But I really sorry. This is the
Priyanka,
first time this is happening.
Priyanka, I think Mahakali has a message. Mahakali is also the guardian of time. Perhaps she's trying to say that we need to reschedule it at a time with a completely different subject at hand, so that we can have a more, richer and a more free flowing conversation. So we'll schedule it very soon. Thank you both of you for joining in. Meher, do you want to add? Do you want to come over right now, or?
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Rituparna, ma'am, for talking about feminism and literally having us travel to the past and come back in the present. Thank you for visiting the arenas of past and present, mythology, fact, and fiction to talk about what feminism is and what it is not. And I think that dichotomy and that the dichotomy of acceptable and unacceptable that you were talking about, that personally was something that I loved listening to. Thank you, Rituparna Chatterjee. And also thank you, Shubhrastha ma'am, for making this conversation flow so smoothly and for asking the pertinent, the important questions. And uh, because of those questions, we could hear so much more of, we could get an insight into what actually are we diving into and how complex is this whole, theme that we're discussing at hand. And there's just so many layers to it, like you rightly said, like Priyanka ma'am rightly said. And Priyanka ma'am, once again, we thank you too for being with us today. Whatever much we could hear, we treasure it. And so, thank you so much for all of it. Thank you, all three. And on behalf of Kalinga Literary Festival, I, Meher Gandhi, would thank everyone who joined us today on the lives. And I would like to tell you that KLF is actively conducting these literary discussions, these events, and you can keep up with them. So you can make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can press on the bell icon, subscribe to the channel so that you get a notification every time we are live and doing such an important and much awaited conversation. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a good night. And have a good day, Rituparna ma'am.